Viva la Colombia! Guzman cried. Viva la Colombia! The mob screamed back in a frenzy, although many of them were no more than paid flunkies, strategically placed among the crowd. I love my country, declared the candidate. 30 seconds of the speech left. Fitzgerald pushed open the French windows to be greeted by the full volume of the masses repeating Guzman's every word. The candidate dropped his voice almost to a whisper. And let me make one thing clear. My love of my country is my only reason for wishing to serve as your president. For a second time, Fitzgerald pulled the stock of the Remington 700 slowly up into his shoulder. Every eye was looking at the candidate as he boomed out the words, Dios guarde a la Colombia! The noise became deafening as he raised both arms high in the air to acknowledge the roars of his supporters, shouting back, Dios guarde a la Colombia! Guzman's hands remained triumphantly in the air for several seconds, as they did at the end of every speech. Fitzgerald lined up the tiny mill dots until they were an inch above the candidate's heart, and breathed out as he tightened the fingers of his left hand around the stock. 3, 2, 1, he muttered under his breath before gently squeezing the trigger. Guzman was still smiling as the boat-tailed bullet tore into his chest. A second later, he slumped to the ground like a stringless puppet, fragments of bone, muscle, and tissue flying in every direction. Blood spurted over those who were standing nearest to him. The last Fitzgerald saw of the candidate was his outstretched arms, as if he were surrendering to an unknown enemy. Fitzgerald lowered the rifle, broke the stock, and quickly closed the French windows. His assignment was completed. His only problem now was to make sure he didn't break the 11th Commandment. So I broke my number one rule when it comes to purchasing new books, which is to never buy a book by an author I'm not familiar with. Normally I go to a local library when I'm looking for something new to read. It was a thrift store and the book was only $1, and the summary on the back seemed promising. And boy did this book deliver. There are so many twists and turns that I really had fun with this spy thriller. The 11th Commandment is about a high-decorated American assassin, Connor Fitzgerald, who is being set up by the CIA to be killed while on his final assignment. Fitzgerald's only hope for survival is Chris Jackson, his former CO from the Vietnam War, and the White House staff, who wants to expose the CIA's director for conspiring against the President of the United States. I really liked this read, partially because it reminded me of the Bourne Identity with Matt Damon and the Splinter Cell video games. Connor Fitzgerald is a likable protagonist who never questions orders or the morality of being a hitman. However, his stubbornness to finish the job proves to be his downfall. He's super smart and he always feels like he's one step ahead of his adversaries. I thought Jeffrey Archer, the author of the book, was cold-blooded when he killed 2 of the good minor characters, but let the main antagonists live. I was shocked. I totally thought the evil Russian president was going to jail. There's not a whole lot of action in this book, but there are a couple of nail-biting moments that really had me on the edge of my seat. Not all the spy novels and thrillers that I read need to be littered with endless gunfights. Sometimes I just need a more slower, character-driven drama with a few action set pieces to keep me invested. My main dislike of the novel was the character of the CIA director, Helen Dexter. There wasn't a lot of depth to her, and I felt her main motivation was just trying to get away with murder. We don't get to read from her point of view or know anything about her past. The Russian President Zaremsky was a cliché Soviet dictator, but at least the reader can see his side of the story and knows what he's trying to achieve, which is to bring back Russia to the Soviet Union days. And he was very smart, he was very clever, he was able to anticipate where Fitzgerald was going to hide out to try and assassinate him. Overall, I would rate this book a 4.5 out of 5. If you have read some of Jeffrey Archer's other works, let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and I hope you all have a happy new year.